Welcome to worship with Clinton Presbyterian Church. Thank you for everyone for joining us either in person or online this morning. We are glad you have joined us for worship. Let us pray. God of sun and the evening star, you have revealed you as your love in Jesus Christ, a love so long expected, yet so surprising in its unfolding. Gather us from near and far, awaken us to your unexpected revelation, the justice of your slow dawning kingdom, the mystery of your boundless invitation. Shine through us, that all people would be drawn to your light in us. Through Jesus Christ, amen.
Hey, church family, I'm so sorry to not be with you this morning, but I know that on this Epiphany celebration, you guys are finding so much joy and community and have a really awesome opportunity this morning to hear from our last Youth Fellows speaker. So we're starting today with this scripture passage from Isaiah. This is a traditional reading for the day of Epiphany, which is, traditionally the day that the wise ones, the Magi, who are following that star, arrive at Jesus' house. They finally get there and get to give their gifts. And because of the way they followed the star and they found this thing they had been searching for, Epiphany is really a whole season that thinks about light and enlightening, that thinks about things that change our perspective, help us see things in different ways, and help us to reach the places that we're trying to get to. So this reading from Isaiah 60 verses 1 through 6, it's just one that I love, and I wanted to read it with you this morning. It says, "Arise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord has risen upon you. For darkness shall cover the earth, and thick darkness the peoples, but the Lord will arise upon you, and his glory will appear over you. Nations will come to your light, and kings to the brightness of your dawn. Lift up your eyes, look around. They all gather together, they come to you. Your sons shall come from far away, and your daughters shall be carried on their nurses' arms. Then you shall see and be radiant. Your heart shall thrill and rejoice, because the abundance of the sea shall be brought to you. The wealth of the nations shall come to you. A multitude of camels will cover you, the young camels of Midian and Ephah. All those of Sheba will come. They will bring gold and frankincense and proclaim the praise of the Lord." Friends, this is the word of God. So I just wanted to say a few things to link our celebration of Epiphany with the speaker you're about to hear from, because I think there's a really beautiful connection there. Especially in this reading from Isaiah, there's so much emphasis on the natural world, right? And all the camels, on the abundance and the peace that are going to be present. And I think that when we talk about environmental advocacy, especially, that's really important. The Bible's full of images of the flourishing of the created world. And there's also this great thing in that passage about nations coming to see this light, right? Kings seeing the light. Don't we have some elected officials that we would like to have see the light in certain ways, right? That's part of the biblical tradition, and that's part of the work of legislative advocacy that our guest today is going to tell you about. This idea of enlightening, of epiphany, of shining light. Sometimes it's our job as people of faith to bring to shine a light on places where it doesn't necessarily get highlighted usually, and to bring those things up to people who have power to make decisions. So anyways, just an introduction. You guys are going to love hearing today from Tali Smookler. She's the Congregation Organizing Director at UU Mass Action. She's been involved in the climate movement for over a decade. Her passion for climate justice began in the summer of 2010 when she participated in a program, listen to this, you guys, where she traveled across Massachusetts by bicycle with 4 other students, and they, along the way, supported communities that were working on climate justice. So cool. Tali has focused her professional work in supporting faith communities to work toward justice. She's worked as a fellow at Repair the World to engage Jewish communities with urban farm programs in Philadelphia. So cool. And at Join for Justice, which trains the Jewish community in social justice and organizing skills. At UU Mass Action, she's been organizing for climate justice for 3 years. And there she's now working in immigrant and housing justice work and youth organizing while co-leading the climate team in her own Jewish community. So please join me in welcoming this really interesting speaker this morning. Thanks for letting me pop in, and Tali, can't wait to hear what you have to say.
Hi. That was a lovely introduction. I was going to introduce myself, but I guess that's been done already. So I'm going to start by sharing a little bit about my personal background in climate work and how I've connected that with faith work over time. I was in Philadelphia in 2014, walking towards a climate action in Center City on a cool late winter day. I could see from blocks away that there were several clergy in their garbs, which I'd never seen at a climate action before. As someone who's Jewish, I was especially inspired and grateful to see people wearing Tali tote, Jewish prayer shawls, as part of the group. It was the first time seeing Jews showing up visibly as Jews in the climate movement, and felt like something I'd been looking for a while. I felt like I wasn't alone anymore as a Jewish person who cared about climate change, or who was drawn to take action on climate as an extension of my Jewish identity. Seeing clergy from all faiths showing up proudly, lending a moral voice to the movement, struck something deep within me about how important and sacred taking action on this issue is. When Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel returned from Selma during the Civil Rights Movement, he was asked by someone, "Did you find much time to pray when you were in Selma?" He responded, "I prayed with my feet." Seeing my first faith organized climate action was the first time I felt like I was able to see what praying with my feet could look like in the climate work I was doing. I first became passionate about climate change a few years earlier in 2010, when I participated on a program called Climate Summer, which Pastor Meagan had mentioned. On this program, I spent the summer with 4 other youth biking across Massachusetts, working to support the grassroots climate movement. As we biked our way across the state, we mostly slept in basements of churches, often worked with those congregations to support their work in the climate movement. It was a transformative summer for me in so many ways. It was the first time I really started to learn about climate change, and I was terrified. At 18 years old, I was learning that we are headed towards a planet that might not be inhabitable for humans like me and my family and my friends. I was learning that my hometown of Boston, where my parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents have lived, could be underwater in the foreseeable future, in addition to whole countries that could be underwater. I was learning that we might experience food and water shortages, that we'd experience extreme and destructive weather and more disease. And that these things weren't only in some future time, but that many people who have been contributing least to the climate movement, to the climate change, people of color or in low-income communities, have already been impacted. These are not easy things to learn or process at age 18 or at any age. But also on Climate Summer, for the first time, I felt like I was joining a social movement, and it felt incredibly powerful and hopeful. I had thought movements didn't exist anymore, that they were something from history class. But here I was becoming part of a small but growing youth climate movement. That summer, as we biked across the state and met with inspiring activists in each town, it felt like we had the power to change the world. As Rabbi Shoshana Friedman says about the climate movement, there's no amount of personal greening or neighborhood cleanups that will put a dent in the climate crisis. Nothing but massive, organized social movements have ever accomplished such reforms. That summer, I finally figured out how to be part of an organized social movement and learned that it isn't about what I can do to stop climate change. It's not about me turning off lights or using renewable, recyclable bags, but it's about what we can do collectively by coming together as part of a movement. For my first few years in the climate movement, I was usually the only observant Jewish person in the room that I knew of, and my Jewish identity felt separate from my justice work. I would often have to figure out how to go to actions on Shabbat or day of rest, where I don't drive or take public transit. I'd have to figure out how to make my climate activism fit around my Jewish practice. It wasn't until I graduated college that I started to do more exploration about my connections between social justice values and my Jewish identity. It now feels to me like those are deeply connected in ways that are often hard to articulate. But fundamentally for me, something that has always felt powerful in Judaism is the emphasis on the holiness of human life. In Bereshit, Genesis, we are told that humans are created b'tselem Elohim, in the image of God. It feels incredibly powerful to have a value that links humans with intrinsic divinity and holiness, whatever that might mean to you. And in the Talmud, we learn whoever destroys a soul, it is considered as if they have destroyed an entire world. And whoever saves a life, it's considered as if they have saved an entire world. This is equating the value of a single human life with the value of an entire world. And both of these, to me, are central Jewish values, that all humans are holy and that life is precious. And as I learned about climate change, I learned about how many entire worlds have and will continue to be destroyed because of human-caused global warming. It's difficult to estimate, but some headlines include, from the World Health Organization, between 2030 and 2050, climate change is expected to cause approximately 250 additional deaths per year from malnutrition, malaria, diarrhea, and heat stress. Bloomberg says climate change linked to 5 million deaths a year. A new study shows almost 10% of global deaths can be attributed to abnormally hot or cold temperatures. And Forbes says climate change should cause 83 million excess deaths by 2100. Regardless of the exact number, it is way too high. One human life is too many worlds to be destroyed by climate change, let alone millions. And that's only one of the impacts of climate change. Others have and will continue to be impacted by displacement, famine, drought, disease, and more. And climate change is not a separate issue from racial justice. All of these impacts disproportionately affect communities of color, working class communities, those on the margins, and in places and countries that did little to cause this crisis. And I and others argue that climate change wouldn't be happening in a world without racism. As Hop Hopkins from the Sierra Club wrote in summer 2020, you can't have climate change without sacrifice zones, and you can't have sacrifice zones without disposable people, and you can't have disposable people without racism. This means that climate change is not just caused by carbon in the atmosphere, it's caused by how we treat each other as disposable. When we treat each other as disposable and say some people and communities we are willing to sacrifice their clean air or their clean water, this can lead to global catastrophes like climate change. Climate change is only possible when we treat people as disposable, and we can't have disposable people without racism. So I see acting on climate change and doing so with a racial justice lens as part of my Jewish identity and as a Jewish communal responsibility. Our tradition values human life and humanity, and climate change is a threat to that. And this value of human life and protecting our planet is a common theme across many faiths. So I encourage you to take a minute to think about what values speak most to you from your faith tradition, and what might those values invite you to do in the face of climate change, racism, and other injustices. I strongly believe that many more faith communities need to be showing up as a moral voice in our movement for climate justice, and that that's what we're called to do as people of faith. Spider-Man says, with great power comes great responsibility. We're living in a generation that is experiencing some of the first impacts of climate change, and in some ways we're the last with the power to mitigate how much harm it will cause. We who are alive right now hold a lot of power in our hands. What we do or don't do will have lasting impacts on future generations. And faith communities historically have played critical roles in social movements. In the moment we are in and in the threat we are facing, all of us, especially communities of faith, have a responsibility to take action. Since 2013, I've been working for faith-based nonprofits, supporting communities in doing social justice work. I worked at Join for Justice, which trains rabbis, young adults, and other Jewish leaders to understand how to organize their congregations or synagogues or communities for social justice. And now I work for UMass Action, working to engage Unitarian Universalist congregations in social justice work. And for most of my time here, I've focused on climate. At UMass Action, all of our work is in partnership with other coalitions and campaigns. We build opportunities for UU's congregations to powerfully support these campaigns so that we can have a stronger impact by coming together. And we work with coalitions who center the voices of those most impacted by the issues we're working on. Because as Ayanna Pressley says, those closest to the pain should be closest to the power. Those most impacted by climate injustice are those whose efforts we should be supporting. And for congregations looking to get started in the climate movement, that's where I would begin. You don't have to do this alone, and you won't have as big of an impact if you do. Many congregations I work with often want to be focusing on greening their building or changing individual behaviors because it's more of a concrete. While this is a piece of the puzzle, it's easy to stop there. Instead, I urge you to find groups already doing systemic work, legislative advocacy, and broader organizing, especially groups on the front line of climate change, and build those relationships so you can collectively explore what you as your congregation can uniquely contribute to this work. I have found that working with others in my own Jewish community and in supporting UUs and working in their communities allows for climate work to come from a place of spiritual grounding. It is more nourishing that I can take actions with my friends and community with songs like "The Tide is Rising and So Are We" to ground us in what we are doing, and to be reminded of stories of resilience from past generations to help me stay in this work. While I feel strongly that we need to work to do all that we can to mitigate climate change, there are already impacts that we'll be unable to stop, and that can feel hopeless at times. Someone helped reframe this issue to me as climate change being a series of crises, not one big crisis that will happen on a single day. This means that part of our climate work is not only trying to reduce carbon emissions, but it's also about how we are building our muscles to show up for each other in moments of crises, and how we are building systems where everyone has what they need to thrive throughout those. We've been tested in this as a country recently. In 2020, when COVID hit, we witnessed how in so many ways we were not set up to show up for each other on a national level. Our healthcare system and labor policies meant that not everyone could afford healthcare or to miss days of work. It meant that people who lost pay struggled to keep their housing or feed their families. But we also saw people show up for each other in mutual aid networks, and how communities of faith were especially equipped to be a resource for their communities. I share this because while it can feel hopeless at times to fight climate change, one thing that keeps me in it is that I know that part of the work is building relationships across communities so that we are set up to care for each other when crises hit, climate or otherwise. This is another part of climate work that congregations are especially set up for. How are we practicing showing up for each other for communities hardest hit by crises will determine how we weather the series of climate crises we face together. It's about building a world now that is ready to care for each other in the face of crises in the future. When I saw clergy at that rally on that winter day in Philly in 2014, it was the beginning of working to integrate my passion for climate justice in my spiritual life. It's hard when year after year, for 12 years now since I've been involved, the headlines mostly just get worse and worse. It would be much easier to pretend that it isn't happening and live my day-to-day life ignoring this reality. But for me, being Jewish and believing that we are all connected, that there is something greater than just me, and that I have a responsibility to others and to the value of holiness of human life, means I have to take climate action, and I have to find a way to stay in it for the long haul. And to remember that past generations have fought for justice in the face of unimaginable oppression and hopelessness to get to a world that they couldn't imagine then. So wherever you are in your journey, individually or as a congregation, I invite you to imagine the things that you care about. Who are the people that are important in your life? What brings you joy? What is your vision for the future? Those are things that are important to hold on to as we work to fight for climate justice, because those are the things that we are fighting for. I invite you to think about how you can show up for the broader statewide climate movement and lend your congregation's unique voice to show up for climate justice. Thank you.
right, let's pray. God, we bring all these things before you. We thank you that you hear us, and we can also share them with the community that we love and that you love. We ask these things in the name of Jesus, and we pray as your Son taught us to do, saying, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For yours is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. Amen.
Song. There we go. Sorry, I was saying I think we're going to sing a song. This is to pull all the light themes together. Meagan picked this song, Arise, Your Light Has Come. It's number 231. Let's stand and stretch and play. Arise, your light is come, the Spirit's call obey. Show forth from glory of your God, which shines on you today. Arise, your light is come, fling wide the prison door. Proclaim the captives' liberty, good tidings to the poor. Arise, your light is come, all you in sorrow born. Bind up the broken-hearted ones and comfort those who mourn. Arise, your light is come, the mountains burst in song. Rise up like eagles on the wing, God's power will make us strong.
For the announcements, we have the Money Minute and the Treasurer, Lisa Carlin. Today, the Youth Fellows meet after church in the Fellowship Hall and de-greening in Sanctuary. On January 15th, the annual reports are due. On January 22nd, we have Children and Youth Sunday. And in January 29th, the annual meeting of the congregation. Please join me as you have in other parts of the service in one of the three parts of this prayer. One part is for me, the worship leader. One will be for anyone who was in the sanctuary in person this morning in italics, and one will be for those joining us remotely in bold. Those joining us on Zoom, please unmute your mics so we can hear you. Holy God, some days it's easy to find you. Other days, the clouds cover the stars and we lose our way.
Regardless of the weather, we want to be a people who seek you.
So when the way is clear, help us to give thanks.
And when remind us that you are near.
God, your presence is all over the place. Keep our hearts brave and keep them curious.
So that, like the Magi, we might be on the lookout for you.
Amen.
We're going to stand and sing the doxology, and you can stay unmuted. Praise God from whom all blessings flow. Praise God, all creatures high and low. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah.
Um, the benediction is for Pastor Meagan, so I don't know how.
I don't think she has another recording. I know anyone.
Love and serve God. Yes. Amen.
Amen. Well done, Fumbassen.
Oh.